welcome to this episode of Leadership and Role Models. I'm Leo Hira. Our goal is to inform, educate, and promote leadership principles of distinguished leaders to serve as role models for young leadership aspirants to emulate. That is, to inspire young aspirants, create a passion that drives them to action to achieve and even exceed the leadership accomplishments of their role models. Our two role models are legendary General Chesty Puller of the U.S. Marine Corps and Amelia Earhart, famed aviatrix.
So, what is leadership?
The basis for producing this series came from a realization of the difficulty and so far unsuccessful means to create universally applicable principles to define leadership. So we study individual leaders because their lives and careers provide practical examples for aspirants of leadership to emulate. In this episode, we cover trust. Whether it's in war, or relying on your navigator when you're flying across an ocean, or when your car is being repaired, or when you are on the operating table, or when you are a practicing religious person, and whether you're leading a team or being relied on in a field of study, trust is in play. Well, what is trust? Well, here are two examples from the lives and careers of General Chesty Puller and Amelia Earhart.
When your nation calls you to war, Marines get hurt, suffer horrible wounds, and not just physically, but mentally. Sadly, some will die. War is not a natural act. Your Marines will be scared, but they will follow a lead, someone with whom you trust. To win in battle, your Marines must be willing to follow you anyway, even to hell and back. Your Marines must be willing to fight, face, and overcome their fears. Kill or be killed.
Chesty's Marines entrusted their lives to his leadership, and Chesty his life to the actions of his Marines. Women in Amelia's time placed their trust in Amelia's flying exploits in the 1920s and 30s and promotion of women participating in professions in order to build their own careers. The reward for that in aviation manifested itself as women aviators filled critical transport piloting roles during World War II. Oh, and let's not leave out your trust in the applicability of what you learn in this series. We trust you'll be informed and educated in leadership principles you can apply to pursue your leadership aspirations. Trust is a leader's best friend. Trust is most tested when the going gets tough and the tough have to get going.
War is not a natural act.
However, creating, building, and sustaining trust is a process. Chesty and Amelia's foundation for trust was built on leading by example. What sort of example? Chesty through his personal valor when competently leading his Marines in battle. Amelia, through her flying exploits, demonstrated to women in a field dominated by men to believe and pursue their careers, and not just in aviation. Chesty built trust by putting his Marines first, caring for and bonding with his Marines. Amelia built trust with the public through her pioneering, record-setting flights, through the way she communicated, and the messages she articulated to a public hungry for good news during her times. Chesty's superiors celebrated his accomplishments through awards and demonstrated their trust through his promotion and assignments. Awards which resulted in Chesty becoming the most decorated Marine in our history for leading fellow Marines in battle and retiring as a Marine Corps general.
When success is achieved, give credit where it's due to your Marines.
Amelia likewise received numerous national and international awards for her accomplishments, and the trust was demonstrated by the adulation she received from the public, becoming an international celebrity. Trust for Chesty ran so high that his Marines would follow him anywhere, and they did, even when it meant they would risk being wounded or killed. And even today, Marines verbally recall Chesty in their sayings and emulate his leadership principles as standard operating procedures. Trust in Chesty persists.
Good night, Chesty. Wherever you are.
Trust in Amelia and her goals translated into funding by investors and donors to support her aviation career. Trust in Amelia's leadership ran so high that Purdue University funded her last plane for an around-the-world flight. The university gave her a position on their campus so that women would be attracted to come study there and be inspired by Amelia's exploits. She was a leader to emulate. Creating trust? How did Amelia and Chesty become trustworthy? Well, think about it. We all experience trust, ourselves having trust in others and others having trust in us.
There's no substitute for experience. That's how you learn. Take my example. From the beginning, I went to the sound of the guns. I led local units in small wars through the jungles of Nicaragua and Haiti. Sometimes I acted autonomously, taking monstrous hikes in pursuit and punishment of our enemies. We nailed them time and again. They even put a price on my head. They never collected. The experience I gained in those small wars proved invaluable in the jungle battles of the South Pacific. Go where the guns go, to be a successful battlefield leader.
Chesty's roots of building trust were, if not created, then hewn in the jungles of Haiti and Nicaragua, where he led local forces in counterinsurgency operations against rebels. Chesty went to Haiti as part of the U.S. intervention to protect U.S. interests in the 1920s as a private, being temporarily promoted to officer rank for the mission. The first notable hint that his men trusted Chesty came in Haiti, where, upon encountering a group of rebels, Chesty drew his weapon, yelled, "Charge," and his local forces followed him and scattered the insurgents. Well, what's so big about that? Trust in Chesty crossed cultural boundaries, where the ethics and habits were so different. Chesty had only recently arrived, and his armed local constabulary unit was escorting a mule train. They were not a pursuit unit. Their trust was so high, they responded and prevailed. His secret? He instinctively knew that his Haitian NCOs and local constabulary regulars understood jungle warfare. He applied their recommended tactics, and they loved him for it.
To be this leader, you must be smart. Study, learn, do so continuously. Your non-coms are your well of knowledge. Drink deeply into what they know.
Think about it. From your own personal experience, do you trust someone who acts upon what you suggested and your team succeeds? In Amelia's case, an example of trust was spectacularly dramatic.
And I proved ready when I won over key decision makers who had selected me to be the first woman to be flown across the Atlantic. Yeah, I flew as a passenger and I felt like a sack of potatoes most of the time, but I had the important responsibility of record keeping. I recorded times, dates, duration, weather conditions, navigation direction, and other issues that came up along the way. And those records proved invaluable for future flight technology and for future women in flight. And upon landing, I became the instant subject of adulation and praise.
Being selected by organizers to participate in a flight across the Atlantic, to become the first woman to do so, and gaining heroine and celebrity status, which launched her record-setting 18-year career in aviation. But let's dig a bit deeper. Creating trust? Well, based on his personal history in battle, Chesty was singled out for awards, not for his personal bravery, but valor in providing leadership to his men and for the success his units achieved in battles in Haiti, 40 encounters, Nicaragua, over 60 encounters, leading locals, and later the island battles of the South Pacific and in Korea. His competency in jungle fighting and by leading and fighting in the front lines are illustrative of his competency, his caring, and communication skill in the midst of battle, which are cornerstones for creating trust. Haiti and Nicaragua gave Chesty, who was operating autonomously, practical experience that proved invaluable in the battles of the Pacific. As for Amelia, creating trust came naturally, however with two faces, the laser-focused public face and the very private face. Amelia was an action figure, setting out to do what drove her, at first in directions like mechanic, medical student, nurse, truck driver, social worker, photographer, always promoting and serving the interests of women at a time of change during the Roaring Twenties when women were coming out, searching for and pursuing new opportunities outside the home. Then in aviation, given her status as an international celebrity and heroine, it was natural to put trust in her public self. She would do what she set out to do, and normally that was new aviation records. She lifted being a woman seeking a career to a new height of public awareness.
I understand you did a lot to promote women's participation in flying and many other endeavors. What exactly did you do?
I advocated women in flight rhythm. My flying career was pioneering. It took place in a time when women were expected to stay home, unsuitable for the physical and mental demands of flying. My flying career spanned the World War I period through the Great Depression and political uncertainties that led to World War II. There were many, many issues vying for public attention and funding. Had I not been an advocate, my and other women's opportunities in sports would have been delayed or stymied. I organized the 99s, a women's flight advocacy group which is still active today. I lobbied President Roosevelt through his wife Eleanor, who I knew for support. I wrote for Cosmopolitan magazine, I did radio talks, I lectured across country, and I wrote my own books. Had I failed, not just women, but the nation would have started pilot resources that were necessary to support World War II. Women filled critical gaps in transport piloting, advocacy and activism. Anna, remember, your objectives are competing for scarce resources. You must advocate.
Keep in mind that along with his awards, there were promotions, culminating in Chesty achieving the rank of general in the Corps. However, throughout, enlisted Marines, including non-commissioned officers, considered Chesty as one of their own. He was consistent in being on the front lines with his men. He was consistent in living life in the field just as his Marines did, including washing his own clothes in the river, eating last, and sleeping on a dirt floor just like his men, and being almost fanatical in ensuring his wounded were cared for, and those going beyond the call of duty being recommended for and receiving deserved awards.
Give credit where it's due. To your Marines, I did it openly, sincerely, aggressively. My Marines knew this and followed through with their performance. In fact, it was my senior NCO who pinned me with my last star.
And although this may sound crazy, he spoke his Marines' language, including the profanities, which of course today are common in general, and communicated with his Marines to ensure they knew and understood what needed to be done. His reputation followed him and grew through the various battles of the wars Chesty fought in, but more than that, so did his capacity to care for his Marines. Chesty's leadership is exemplary in mutual trust between leader and subordinates. They were comrades in arms. Chesty also benefited from, and Marines from him, an organizational trust held by Marine for the Corps and the cause, which is, of course, the nation's cause. Amelia was fearless, and with every record she set, the risk grew, and she reached the flight objective with a new record. Flight was expensive, and in those days, women did not have the resources or the opportunities to fund their own careers. And Amelia, although she was married to wealthy publisher George Putnam, needed external funding. So in order to raise those funds needed for reaching ever longer and tougher objectives, investors had to have growing trust in her ability to achieve such objectives. And the key to that trust was not just her competence and skill, but her celebrity status and the trust the public put in her to warrant sponsorship and funding.
I converted the lessons I learned to be a successful fundraiser to support my flying career. I lectured throughout this country raising money. My husband and I even persuaded Purdue University to fund a flying laboratory for me. Their funds helped pay for my last plane. Anna, learn how to raise the funds you need to meet your objectives.
In Amelia's case, her life and her navigators' lives were inextricably linked in mutual trust. So even when trust is established, one cannot sit on laurels, but as the challenges and risks grow, so does the level of trust that is required. Chesty going from the counterinsurgency operations in Haiti and Nicaragua to the much fiercer island battles of the Pacific, and Amelia in flying farther and further to set new records. But what are the threats to trust that each faced during their careers, and how were they overcome? Amelia crashed her airplane in an attempt to take off in Honolulu on her first attempt to fly around the world. There are those who claim it was her pilot error, while others claim the crash was caused by a blown tire. With that occurrence, trust could have been destroyed in not just her abilities, but in sponsors' willingness to finance repairs to the plane and subsequent flight. She overcame doubts through fundraising and did make the second and failed attempt. Some say Amelia flew by instinct rather than by keeping up with technology. Critics go on to say that this weakness was caused by her promotional campaigns, eating up her time and sapping her energy. Instinct took the better of her needed sense to master advances made in technology, which is strange, as initially she embraced technology. The event that challenged trust in Puller's case was his performance in the Battle of Peleliu, which by most accounts was a strategic mistake to try and take the island and actually went counter to MacArthur's own island hopping plans to defeat Japan. He and his Marines' task was to take the highest ground on the island, a height and a series of ridges leading to the top that was honeycombed with tunnels from which to decimate an attacking force. Puller's Marines trusted in Chesty's leadership to make continuous attempts to frontally assault the Japanese positions through the valleys between the ridges and to take higher ground. His units were decimated to the point that a general sent in to assess the situation ordered the survivors withdraw, not just from the front, but from the island to be reformed with replacement Marines. You can only imagine the pall this must have brought over trust in Puller. Yet, despite this tragedy, Puller went on to further action and success in the Korean War when units under his command played a pivotal role in the successful withdrawal of Marines surrounded by Chinese units. Peleliu was an anomaly, which created severe criticism of Puller's leadership. Yet trust by his Marines and his superiors did not waver nor cease. He retired as a Marine Corps general, with most agreeing it was his health that required his retirement. So that's one thing to remember and to learn from. Even distinguished role models face and sometimes fail. However, isn't that only human? So mahalo for watching, and until next time, aloha.